Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. We are, this is 1 week Thursday coming up from Turkey Day. And Phyllis and I are going to be doing Turkey Day trot, Phyllis, as always. I'll come down to, Maryland and take you on about a marathon and, wheel you around there. Okay. Phyllis in Fort Meade. We'll have a good time. Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So as I let folks join, and before I introduce our guests and before we get into it today, again, welcome everybody. Happy early holidays to you. We always like to do a bit of banter. We have the very awesome Mackenzie Brown filling in today. Gary unfortunately had a power issue, so he was going to co-host with us today. So I'll be playing Gary Pica. But let's get on into it a little bit, Mac, in our banter. I know no one's surprised about this. Can you see my screen okay, Mac?
Yeah.
So, Mac, since you're in the threat, APG, Adversarial Pursuit Group, this is an interesting one where we're finally, not surprisingly, right? We're seeing agentic operate on its own in terms of attack. This is a short article. I'll put the brief, I'll put the URL in for everybody. But I mean, it looks like, China, they're attributing it to China was able to let the, Claude, Anthropic's Claude, go ahead and do, as it says here, an astonishing 80 to 90% of the tactical work on its own without any human intervention, everything from jailbreaking Claude to stealing credentials. So, Mac, as you look at this and put your days, because we're talking a little about Microsoft, but talk about your days and the IR side of the world. What do you take away from this? What should MSPs be thinking about?
Man, I just commented on something last week too around ChatGPT, a case they found where ChatGPT was used to basically do create malicious API configurations against entities in Azure metadata services. They found another server-side request forgery, which just kind of goes back to old school, like application security, software security days of classic methods. But they used ChatGPT servers to basically conduct the attacks and exploit the SSRF vulnerability, which I found was interesting is the same way I find this one interesting as most people talk about AI based attacks, starting with, sophistication and social engineering and creating phishing kits and some infrastructure build as well. And this is the first executed full-blown campaign with highly confident attribution to, the PRC, the People's Republic of China. It's not a shocker. It doesn't surprise us, but it's the first attribution they've done where they can say, yes, now we have a nation state leveraging full autonomous attack chains. And the same way with the SSRF is it's basically it's officially weaponized. This isn't a proof of concept. They've done attribution and they're using AI via prompt injection as the proxy, essentially.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so Mac, doesn't it give you some kind of obfuscation though, if you're using tools like this? How do you get the attribution? And maybe, like your take, and go to Phyllis here as well. What are your thoughts? How do they get that, from your perspective?
That's a good question, actually. That's what I haven't been able to figure out is how they're doing this. For the attribution aspect, to know that it was, they can do it via Claude, obviously, to find out that they're using Claude, but how they were able to connect it back to the PRC is unknown to me. Because I didn't see it anywhere in any of the other articles where they were talking about it. And I think just the most interesting part is we're probably going to see a lot more of this, only because they essentially convinced AI. They were role playing. They just pretended to be a pen tester essentially and conduct, like you said, the credential harvesting, the vulnerability scanning. They just were able to bypass the guardrails that were set up which seems really easy now. And they were obfuscated in the entirety of it. I don't know how they were able to attribute it back to it, but I'm sure they'll have more information released around that.
Yeah, it's the getting around it, Phyllis. Like I read another article with Chip Buck, and we were talking about that. The AI says, hey, that's not cool, right? And with what you're asking me to do, and the response, by the threat actor was, oh no, it's for a CTF. Don't worry about it. And so the AI is like, oh well, if that's the case, if it's just a CTF, then here you go. But any thoughts from your side on this? As you look at these types of attacks, Phyllis?
I mean, I think it's pretty clever, but as we find out more, I'm just kind of curious. How were the access controls in place? We often think about, what kind of data did it actually have access to, and should it have had that access, right? And so, as more is revealed, I think it'll be interesting to see. We always talk about, oh, you really have to have those access controls in place. It's that balance between the usability and how you really want to have, oh, I want to have these great answers. So I want to give it access to everything because I want it to be smart and not, I don't want it to give me misleading data and all this kind of stuff to, well, you really need to limit it, because then it does have access to everything. Then you have perhaps results like this, like really, should they be doing CTF exercises? Should that person be allowed to do that and then have access to credentials and so on and so forth?
Well, thank goodness we don't have to worry about governance in our industry, Phyllis. Everybody's got Vince, do you guys talk at all about this? But we'll get into obviously introducing you shortly. But like when you do an ultimate partner, you probably have AI experts and folks that are in the channel on this. Does this kind of stuff get brought up in those conversations, or thematics like this?
Not yet. I would say that everybody's looking over their shoulders saying this is what we're going to expect, right? We could spend time on what Ultimate Partner does and how we focus in, because partnering is such an important and critical part of what organizations do or need to do. And yet it's misunderstood, it's misaligned within organizations, and most people just don't really understand how to do it well, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why we exist. We spend a lot of time on AI. There's a mystery around, how do I make money around AI? Agentic AI. How do we layer agentic AI into our applications? But this is exactly where I think we've all been like kind of worrying what's going to happen next. What's our doomsday situation going to look like, right? So the fact that this happened and it's happened now is just, it's not surprising. I think what's surprising is we're finding out about it as quickly as we are. Right? Yeah. I mean, we expect, these are the bad actors who've been doing a lot of bad things for a long period of time, as you all know, because this is your world of cyber. But most of us don't know about. Mac and I were talking a little bit before we started about Microsoft. We kept a lot of that information around attacks and malware. We kept it very cloaked from customers unless they were attacked, and they were, situations happened all the time. And it's when it became ingrained in technology. We got to go fix this. So a lot of the backup and recovery software vendors have incorporated security and AI and recovery capabilities into their protocols and their products. But like I said, we're still early days in terms of adoption, and everything you're seeing right now that's being talked about, and I'll be at Microsoft Ignite this week, is going to be about frontier firms, which is we all need to step in full-footed, right? And so, there's a lot of vulnerabilities out here we need to address. So
yeah. So great segue, Vince. Let's we're going to be talking today about Ultimate Partner, building an MSP growth engine with Microsoft. Yep. Now you work, obviously that's your background, but you do have a multitude of hyperscalers also now come into the Ultimate Partner, as I understand it. And so before we launch in and I play the role of Gary, tell us a little about yourself and what you do there.
So I've described my career as 4 successful business transformations. I started off in the early days of technology adoption, working with some of the founders of some of the technology like Wi-Fi, and before there was Wi-Fi, some of the early barcoding symbologies, got involved in a lot of the usage of wireless, what is now 5G capabilities. And then I did a startup, I did a turnaround, both wildly successful. One went public, the other one was sold and acquired for 10x, a multiple of Golden Gate Capital had taken us out for. And then I was recruited by Microsoft because they didn't really have good leadership on partnerships within the public sector business. And at that time, public sector was a standalone entity at Microsoft. I was skip level to Judson Althoff when he joined Microsoft and was running the North America business. He's now the new CEO of the commercial business. And so I learned quite a bit. I mean, I had this pedigree of enterprise selling, moved into building a channel with the turnaround, and understood how to like go do that and go build a new market and aggressively go after that through reach and scale. And then Microsoft acquired me because I had done that successfully and helped the company get acquired for again 10x. When I got to Microsoft, it was incredible. It was the fire hose every day, right? Because I took over what became a $4.6 billion business of Microsoft. But even within Microsoft, we struggled on how to partner, even though we had these big customers, government customers and state, local, and education customers. But I also found that organizations struggled internally. Like some of these partners, Microsoft claims to have 500,000 partners in its partner ecosystem. They struggled with success. And so I left Microsoft. I didn't want to move out to Seattle. I started a podcast called The Ultimate Guide to Partnering at a time that nobody was really doing podcasts. I started interviewing leaders on what success looked like and what failure looked like and how to go achieve your greatest results through successful partnering. I've had most of the top executives of Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Salesforce at the time came onto the podcast, and we continue to do the podcast. We now have a studio in Boca Raton, Florida. I live in Jupiter, Florida, where we do professionally produced podcast episodes. And over the last few years, actually at the end of COVID, things really blew up during COVID. People were watching and listening to podcasts more and more. And then after COVID, people wanted to get back in person. And the human aspect and human element became even more critical to people just engaging with other leaders. And so we started doing events about 3 years ago. We've done 6+ events in the last 2 years. We've been growing. We've been doubling every year the last 3 years. And we continue to see this community around all partners of all types, by the way, that come in. If I was to do the chart with you right now, a third of the partners that come, first of all 3 hyperscalers, we work with Microsoft, we have Google and Amazon come in and do sessions. We believe that the ecosystem is surrounded by the 3 hyperscalers. And, you could argue that Oracle is maybe the 4th hyperscaler out there, but that all of the technology organizations, all the buying is riding on some set of rails. The cloud has become ubiquitous and everything is in the cloud today. And so there's organizations, and we say there's at least 500,000 of them, that are partnering at various levels. And this old world about channeling, which was a single-threaded model, has been changed. And it's now an ecosystem approach, an orchestration of an ecosystem approach. We bring all those leaders into the room. We have some of the very top ISVs that develop applications and capabilities. We've had Cisco on stage. I could rattle off a bunch of names of some of the top technology companies that come and speak or talk at our events. And it's very instructive too. This isn't a sales pitch, burn the slides. Like, we want to have a real conversation about what you're doing to drive success in a specific area. And that's what we think makes our community unique. And then it's the ISVs, it's the resellers, it's the MSPs, it's really partners of all types that come into our community. Over the last, I would say, 2 years, we've seen a real uptake in the MSP community, because we believe the MSP community isn't as well served as it should be in this hyperscaler world. Like, they're used to some vendors that are trying to sell software that's somewhat outdated, and yet some of this capability and tools are actually embedded in what the hyperscalers already provide to those customers as part of their contracts and their applications.
Well, I think that, Vince, this is why we want you on, because like what we're starting to see, first off, I think on the margin, the MSPs we work with, right, and it works, with the SMB to mid, right, enterprise, that are on this, and that we could say even the big PE back ones. Microsoft is critical to their business, right? You take away Microsoft, we kind of don't have a business. And this isn't like, I'm not sitting here placating Microsoft. What I am doing is saying, like, let's get experts on here so we can help our partners better navigate. Because one of the things we hear about is struggles. How do I navigate this behemoth? How to, like, we got awesome, Anne's on here, and Joe's on here, and many other, Eric Monroe's on here, right? And when we look at, the behemoth that, is, starting off with, their core productivity at M365, but now it's morphing into various other things that drive security, whether it's Defender, Intune, and obviously the AI and Copilot. When you think about that, if you have these types of MSPs in front of you and you look at your backdrop of working with Microsoft over these years, what are some of the, I guess, critical insights you would share? How do these folks start to think about navigating, this organization?
Yeah. I mean, and I'll add to what you were saying. We didn't even talk about the cloud, right? We talked about the productivity tools. We talked about some of the suites, but remember, this is all riding on the rails of the cloud, right? And so if you think back, let's talk about transformation.
Everybody's still on SBS server here.
Exactly. But we think about the transformation my whole career has been about transformation. I think all of our careers have, right? We've all helped organizations move from client server to the internet to the cloud and now AI. And we start to see this transformation happening more and more rapidly. So one of the benefits of Microsoft, of course, is your desktop, right? Phyllis came from the government. The government is it's the single largest customer of Microsoft. Every desktop in the government is running Microsoft Office and all of the tools, right? And they're still using Windows machines for the most part. But the world has changed now, and it's a 3-cloud world. What's really critical to these organizations, I talk about a set of operating principles. So I can go back up and I can go deep too in this conversation. I think what happens from the point of view that you all sit in is that organizations struggle with working with Microsoft. I'll say that because I think what happens is unless you're close enough to it, or you're working with an organization that's close enough to it, you struggle. Microsoft doesn't understand the MSP market as well as it should. I'll call that out. The MSP market is supported for the most part through distribution. Right. And distribution partners were set up because of inventory and credit, right? So this was a different model, and there was a layer put in between the technology and the customer or the partner. Let
me just interject there, Vince, to your point, right? I mean, if I'm a Pax8, a SureWeb, whatever, which are amazing companies, right? My job is to move product, and that's my interface with the majority. Unless I'm a CSP or a really big MSP out there with 100, 150 plus thousand endpoints, that's the interaction I have.
That's right. And that's why organizations like Pax8, Ingram, Arrow, they're all coming to our events and sponsoring my conferences because they also recognize that they're, and the ones you mentioned, SureWeb and Pax8 have evolved their models. The others are trying to evolve their models. Now, the good news for Microsoft and for I'll call them the disties for lack of a better term, but they are now being brought front and center into the game, I would say, of partnerships in a more relevant way. Microsoft has finally recognized that it needs to have that fluid engagement across all components. So there's a lot of changes happening at Microsoft. I'll be hosting a breakfast next week at Microsoft's event, this week, I should say, at Microsoft's event at the St. Regis in San Francisco. And I'll have the new marketplace leader. So marketplace has become the new vehicle that Microsoft is using so that customers can have access to all the products it needs, buy them through a distributor or whatever method they use, pull in all the partners that they need to. And the customer is now at the center of the transaction. The customer is now making the decision about, I need this MSP, I need these 3 ISVs applications, I might need another systems integrator or an MSP that acts as a systems integrator to help drive that and cobble that whole solution together. So Microsoft is enabling its partners in a better way than it had been before, and helping to pull that together through its marketplace approach. And so there's some really interesting things happening at Microsoft. Microsoft has always been a partner-centric organization. It just hasn't always shown up the way that you would expect compared to the way channel vendor organizations have operated.
Yes, talk about the channel relationship to this ecosystem relationship now, and that you're starting to hear and see literally Microsoft showing up. What's going on? What's the, I'm encouraged. Again, I want everybody to hear here. It's like, I'm not a fanboy cheerleader. There's, I've ridden 3 decades of this where the big players come in, they leave. The big players come in. So when they come in, I'm fine. Like, let's jump on the wave and ride. I want to understand why should we get on the wave and ride here, and what's going on now that they care all of a sudden, Vince? What's happening?
I think they always cared, and I'm not like lining up against my Microsoft shares in this conversation, but I always talk about, I call it the Bill Gates moment, because Bill Gates came to Boca Raton, Florida, near where I live, and he signed an agreement with IBM back in 1982, and he licensed software to IBM. He didn't sell them the operating system, he licensed it to them. And he got IBM to license the components of their PCs so other manufacturers could make them. And that created this thing that we now call an ecosystem. It created the channel that we now know it, right? The CDWs, all these companies were sending you catalogs at your house to buy components. And MSPs kind of grew out of that too, because somebody had to go break fix, right? Somebody had to plug in the networking cables. That's how the MSPs evolved. You went to Joe's PC store in your hometown, and that's who you operated with. And that's the evolution now to this MSP model that we see today, right? So Microsoft was always there. Of the hyperscalers, of those 3 companies I always talk about, probably the most partner-centric organization. They've always paid. They've always made it transparent. Their sellers don't get paid. 96% of Microsoft's revenue goes through partners. The only revenue that goes directly to Microsoft is some consulting services work that they do, like a big contract to help, like boots on the ground at the Department of Defense or something like that. Almost all their revenue goes through partners. What you haven't seen in the MSP community has sort of been the face of Microsoft showing up. I think they took, I'll say this, they took the easy way out before about saying to MSPs, you're served by these disties. And I have been, and I'll share this with you because I've gotten up at these conferences. I remember going to a CRN, the Channel Reseller News Conference 12 years ago, and standing up and saying, you all need to move to the cloud. And everybody looked at me doe-eyed. And then the last couple of years, I've been going to Channel Partners events, because the same guy who used to run the CRN events now runs Channel Partners. And he gets me up on stage to talk to the MSP community about the cloud and about AI, and how organizations need to lockstep in here and move from their old business models, which was the old kind of, it's kind of based on the old VAR model in many respects, to the new model, and embrace all this new technology that's come to bear in the last couple of years, because it's rapidly changing. It's happening so fast that we blink our eye. It's why we're doing 4 events next year, because 3 months later, after we've had really relevant content and learnings, it's changed again. And then we have, so we're trying to keep the community really alive and relevant around what's happening.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement. So in other words, I remember the days in the mid 2000s. I was joking about SBS, but we used to have these Microsoft representatives, employees come in. We do these big SBS workshops and certificates, and it was like they were really in. So like I said, I'm excited about our community being able to get face to face again with Microsoft to understand, right, how to navigate, whether it's certifications, whether it's MDF, whether it's growing their better working with ISVs and their strategies. So no, I'm all for it. I guess maybe just before I hand this off to Phyllis, Talk to us about like what you see the challenges are. You did a podcast on with another gentleman, your most recent one, on where I guess almost MSPs get it wrong, or partners get wrong, maybe their expectations, and
Yep.
Working with a hyperscaler like Microsoft. So maybe just touch maybe a thread, a few points there, if you would.
I would say that partners of all types get it wrong. MSPs a lot of them are owner operated. So you get that real touch point. That person who's running the business is also the person reaching out to Microsoft. But people set the wrong set of expectations about their engagement with a tech giant like Microsoft, who's spending $120 billion this year on chips and data centers alone, and has a scale model that people don't understand. Microsoft, if you went to any of the other ISVs in the marketplace and you looked at their sales organizations, they're much more robust than Microsoft's comparatively. When I was in the public sector business, I don't think we had 1,000 employees. And yet we had, when I left, $4.6 billion business, we had the largest customers in the federal government. Our state and local and education markets, there were 80,000 agreements that were signed by education institutions every year. So think about having 60 or 70 sales reps call on every school district in the United States. Think about the scale of that. You can't touch all your customers, which is why you really rely on your partners to help drive that. What was missing is that letting the partners know that that's the way Microsoft scaled and that's the way they organized, and that they really did. They would say it. You'd see it on slides all the time, like, we really care about partners, we love partners, but there really hasn't been. What I'm starting to see now more is that reinforcing and really reorganizing to drive that, to help these MSPs be more successful. And again, because if it wasn't for these partners like MSPs, Microsoft wouldn't be able to sell the technology and deploy the technology. It's really incumbent on these MSPs to go drive that.
It's not only that, but I'm really proud of so many of them, like especially like the ones here. And again, this is not a sycophantic statement, Vince. Like the way in which over the last 4 to 6 years they've matured, and I mean, going, historically the MSPs that I grew up with service 25 employees to 75 employees. It's not uncommon now where we're seeing partners that come to Write a Boom or on this call, co-managing environments with 2,500, 5,000 employees. And like I said, on the margin, and sometimes Microsoft even takes a step back. Like I was just, at an event and we were at a dinner, and the gentleman sitting across from me, they manage 150,000 endpoints. Well, that's larger than a lot of the enterprises Microsoft is dealing with. And, so it's kind of this, I think, wake up on both sides, which is really encouraging, right?
It is. And what's happened, in fact, I had Erwin Visser, who was on, he was this week's podcast, but he was with me 2 weeks ago at the event, and we did a fireside chat. Microsoft broke out a piece of its business, which is, you nailed it, Andrew. The top, if you look at the pyramid, the very top of the pyramid is where everybody thinks they want to play. The very largest enterprises, there's about 5,000 of them. They're really big. That's the Coca-Colas of the world, right? Delta Airlines and so on, and the government. But there is I call it the acre of diamonds, this middle area. It's organizations, let's say, that are under like 5,000 employees to maybe 500 employees that Microsoft now manages differently. They have an organization that they call it's small, medium, enterprise, and corporate. And they layered in their entire channel organization to support that particular customer. And if you look where the MSPs play, that's exactly that. They're in that part of the pyramid and below the SMB market. There's huge customers there, by the way. If you went to any other ISV, they would have a direct seller tied to those customers. Microsoft, again, says they have maybe a 1 to 100 or 1 to 250 ratio of a sales rep to customers. This is why it's so important to get to know how to work with these Microsoft sellers. And that's one of the things we do. We bring Microsoft in. We bring in some of these MSPs, as you suggest, that have been part of our community. They're walking away from I just spoke to one on Friday, and he said, I don't need to go at any other events. I have like 10 or 12 calls this week just based on the people I met at your event. And that was just one particular person.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see this huge opportunity, and people are starting to recognize that. And again, there's the pros and cons about how you do it well. The fallacy is that Microsoft is going to give you leads. No, you have to become known to Microsoft. You have to build a brand within Microsoft. You have to be known for one thing. I always like to talk about the shiny quarter in a bucket full of shiny quarters. Like, you have to stand out for the one thing you do better than everybody else. And you have to figure out how you add value back to Microsoft. Once you build again, it's all about relationship building and rapport and everything else. And even though they're layering in AI and they're finding out about you, meeting you and getting to know you and getting to know where you can help them be more successful, those are the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, we've seen it, as I handed to Phyllis, guys like Nabil, who was on last week, Tim
Absolutely.
Coquette, I know Marissa is like, there are definitely these organizations now that, you have to sell sell what you do really well. It's not just like you said, hey, I'm here, so throw me leads. But if you understand how to navigate and show, hey, we're experts, like someone put it in GCC, right? Hey, if you're, hey, we worked really hard this year, thinking of Bobby at Axiom, or an Andy Sauer, that, are now, level 2 CMMC specialists that, you typically would look at the behemoth, like a Summit 7, are up and comers, or Lawrence Cruciana, who Phyllis knows.
Yep.
These folks are starting to become known, and Microsoft sees value in that. So I like to call it, as I turn it to Phyllis, that middle area, I call it the meaty middle, Vince.
The meaty
middle. I got that from Blakely. So you can go now, Phyllis.
Yeah, sure. This is a good lead into my first question. Could you provide perhaps any more tips or details to the MSPs on the call to say, how do I separate myself?
Yeah.
What can I do to present my case to these hyperscalers?
So we talk about 7 operating principles of successful partnering, and we talk about how you need to get your own in-house in order. And that's, having the right growth mindset, having a real vision and set of operating principles around how you drive your business, and so on, and having the commitment of your own organization. But once you lock arms or try to go across the other side to where the Microsoft Alliance is, there's some things you can do to differentiate yourself. And we talk about brand and story being one of those key things. And you need to be known for one thing. You need to find out, and this is where the discovery phase takes effect here, is what are the things that make you unique and different? What are the reasons why you add value? I mentioned the fact that scale is a huge issue. You probably know more about the customers in whether it's geography, industry, or however you segment, than Microsoft does, than the Microsoft salesperson does. So you can be a resource back to them, because you can help them better understand their customers. Now, where Microsoft can layer in or lean in for you is they can add value, because obviously you're working with a Microsoft person who's in a leadership role, or they're in a sales leadership role. And they can also support you and say nice things or good things about validate your solutions and so on. So you need to work on that. You need to work on your branding. You need to work on your engagement. It's also, and Nabil is perfect. He's a perfect example here. He's a friend of both of ours. You kind of have to lean in. You have to invest. You have to go out of your way. If you really want to and this is where coming to our events has been so critical for some people, because they get to meet some of these Microsoft leaders. They actually come to our events and speak, and they stick around because they want to learn more from the partners. And so they'll stick around for a meal, or they'll break bread, or come join an executive dinner afterwards. And so there's an opportunity to be had there. And I always have a picture on my slides, a gentleman who leads an organization called AppPoint. He's their chief brand officer, Dux Raymond-Sai. Dux, 20 years ago, when AppPoint was this little company, today they're publicly traded. They're over 350 million a year ARR, going to $1 billion. And when they first started out, they didn't have any relationships. They didn't have any real business. But Dux came up to Seattle, and he knew some people, and he got to know them, and he started to develop personal relationships. And he made himself available and supportive of them. And you'd be surprised how few people actually do that. You can really differentiate yourself by taking the time and effort to build your brand with the tech giant.
Well, Vince, just anecdotally, right? Didn't Joseph Landez and the folks at Nerdio build a monstrous organization with that same fervor and essence?
Exactly.
Like, you know that story, but like, it's not for the faint of heart and sitting back, right? I mean, they worked it hard, and now they're a prominent player as well. And Ducks will be presenting it right at Boom. He's phenomenal.
Ducks is amazing. He's a good friend, a good supporter at Ultimate Partner. They are a corporate sponsor of all our events. And I knew Joseph and I knew the Nerdio guys when they first started out, by the way, and they were a small MSP in the Chicagoland area. And Joseph came in as a former Microsoftie, and he was able to navigate walk the hallways, right? And got them in to see the right people and develop the right relationships. And they've grown their business exponentially since then. So, yeah. But we see that. I mean, a small MSP can do the same thing. Microsoft still has local offices. Microsoft is encouraging people to come back to the office now, at least 3 days a week. So there's always opportunities. If you're in Dallas, as an example, there's an office in Dallas. You can go there. Some of the early partners in the early days of public sector would come take people out to lunch. They'd host dinners. They would do things to develop local relationships.
Ann Westerheim, who's on, works her ass off. She's in the Boston area. Like, they do these things at like MIT. She's way smarter than me. I couldn't even go into that place. They don't let me in those, Mac, because of my IQ level.
You must be this tall to
height, IQ, but yeah. So go ahead, Phyllis.
Very cool. Very cool.
I mean, I think that's important because, even when I was at the agency and, we were going to go in and whatever we're going to do, it would always be like, what's our value add?
Yeah.
Why us versus someone else? And we do the same at CIS. So I think that's a great point because it's more than I have to be $5 cheaper a seat than the MSP down the road. What is my unique value add? So, on that same vein, how should MSPs look at their business model to align with Microsoft's priorities, which you say every quarter you're updating because it is evolving so quickly. So we have cloud, we have security, we have AI, but at the same time, they are small mediums.
Yes.
If that $5 per seat could really mean a lot.
Struggling with the zero trust. They're still struggling with the other things.
I do go back to, I'll sound like a commercial for Ultimate Partner, but we spent a lot we did it even with the podcast, getting these leaders on to talk about what the priorities are and understanding the priorities. Now, in fact, what you're hearing about is becoming a frontier firm. So you need to look at it. You have to look with both eyes open about how your business model is and how it's evolving, but aligning to the hyperscalers, aligning your business model is a recipe for success. And I think that them understanding that you're aligning to their business model. There's an MSP, I'll call them an MSP. He's a large SI that moved their business. It was called 3Cloud. They just got acquired by Cognizant just last week. I don't know how many millions of dollars, but I'm sure it's in the 9 figures. And they started out, they were former Microsofties. They developed relationships. They evolved their model. They went in. I've seen this happen a couple of times too. Not that I would say that you have to do this, but I've seen it where some walk in and say, we're only a Microsoft shop, or we're only a Google shop, we're only an AWS shop. That does engender you in a way. There's a layer of trust that gets associated with you and the sales reps that you would engage with. So I think there's several ways that you can do that. If you were with the agency, if you had a partner that, for instance, had people that had security clearances and you went to them and said, hey, we have people with security clearances. We can help you solve some of your customer problems. I think there's always ways that you can develop your story and build your brand that way. And relationships build story and brand. And then it comes down to, I'll call the other 2 factors that are part of this, maniacal focus. So I would meet with partners all the time. We'd have all these big meetings. They would all show up with their PowerPoint. Their executives would all be dressed up. They'd have their PowerPoint deck. They did a big presentation to me. We'd all high five each other at the end of the presentation. Let's go after it. And then crickets.
Yeah.
I go to my PDM and go, what happened? Nothing. Nothing ever happened. Maniacal focus is so critical. weekly meetings, monthly meetings. Get your leadership involved. Get your organization aligned to their organization, and ensure that you're demonstrating how you're driving success, and you build that flywheel. You start off with one customer, it goes to 2, 3, 4, 5, 100, but you build that flywheel of success, and you demonstrate it, and you bring it to every meeting. You tell them about the last success and what you're doing now, and then you can ask for help. Then you have the permission to ask for the leads and permission to ask for help and support or
bring something to the table, right, Vince? I try to live my life where, it's like when you and I were talking about Right at Boom, I'm like, my first thing isn't like, Vince, hey, you can help me this way, right? If I'm going to be successful, it's like, hey, this is how we converted this customer and did all this great stuff. And they were using this EDR and this endpoint. And we, like, show them a vision of what you're doing. I think there's something in that, you bring them how you can help. Right. Exactly. And then when you can show people how you can help them, they're much more apt to, the law of reciprocity is the apt to kick in versus, hey, can you help me?
Yes. So now you've done all those things right. And we talk about this. We talk about the operating principles in a lot of the talks we do. You've gotten everything right. You become top partner. You've done everything. You've got you've maximized your business results. And then guess what's going to happen? Microsoft's going to change its priorities. It's going to change its programs. It's going to change leadership, because every 2 or 3 years, somebody takes a new job at Microsoft, and you have new people you're working with, right? Which is what exactly. Yeah, Mac knows this. She was inside the 4 walls.
Hey, just real quick on that, Vince. But that is so thematic of what MSPs need to be doing in their customers. How many times do I hear customers saying, yeah, we lost a $30,000 MRR deal because, a new team came in, or we only had a relationship here, but didn't have it here, and here. Or, we're dealing in a world of M&A, even with our customers. So we have to have more than just 1 or 2 points of contact, right? To make sure that we have some coverage.
You nailed it. And you need to be actively listening for any changes coming down the road. Now, in the case of a big Microsoft or somebody like that, different than a customer, but with Microsoft, they're going to announce their changes, and then you have to adapt to that. We talk about that AQ, which is adaptability quotient, is greater than EQ and IQ combined. So you really have to think about your own adaptability of your organization, because we're all entrepreneurs. We know this. We need to stay agile. We need to pivot when the time is required to do that. And in the case of our customers, especially with all the changes going on right now, oh my goodness, like I don't even know how we are going to stay ahead of this curve.
I think it's a really good point, because even at CIS, right, what we have is not mandatory. And so it's always this constant reaching out, and there's always high turnover at the other organizations. So you have to constantly be reaching out to say, oh, what you ever don't want to do is send out an email and be like, hey, it's been a while since we've chatted, and then it bounces. Or it's like, right? I mean, that's like the worst. So you want to always maintain that relationship so they remember you, and then they do the handoff if they're moving on, or, you find out what's going on. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, now I have to find a new person there.
Or in the world of AI, look, the whole, I'll paraphrase John Barrows, who's one of the best sales trainers ever. If you're doing, hey, touching base and checking in, AI can do touching base and checking in. You have got to, all of us, right? All of us, not me, I'm not pointing fingers. We all have to figure out ways in which we can add value. If AI can do what you think you're about to do via a phone call, via an email, via whatever, if you're like, could AI do this? Stop.
Yes. That's right.
Speaking of AI, I'm going to hand it off to Mackenzie.
Yeah.
Only Mackenzie can do what.
My mind, like, okay, so what do MSPs? You need to be a super annoying super fan. You need to and you're not wrong about Microsoft is massive. I mean, when we did IRs and we get on the phone with a CISO and we're like, all right, everything's on fire. I'm like, who's your account manager at Microsoft? Because I need them to get the contracts and do the actual money part of this. And they'll be like, I don't know. we don't, like, even organizations don't have that connection. And I'm like, okay, well, who's your MSP? Because you need to recover. And they'd be like, I don't know. Let me figure that out. And they could usually get the answer of the MSP a lot faster than a CSAM over at Microsoft who actually runs their account. So yeah,
not surprising.
Yeah, I can see that a lot. And, you know, I guess this brings me in a little bit on the first question too. It sounds like the biggest things, especially on differentiation, is community, connections, making sure those emails don't bounce, like Phyllis was saying, in this ecosystem. So as an MSP leader, how do they, especially in this new age of automation and AI, how do they start attracting some of the top talent that they're going to need to ensure they have those connections back into that partner ecosystem?
That's a tough question. That's a tough question. And I'm not sure if I have the answer for this one. I think that talent is always going to be a premium, especially now with AI, right? So how do you continue to evolve your business and hire the right talent to support it is going to continue to be an issue for these organizations. I do feel my good friend Jay McBain has a slide that he talks about watering holes.
Yeah.
And I do think that for the same reasons that you need to stay close, I still come back to human connections and human approach to everything. Staying active in all those watering holes is probably the best way to meet the best talent that you'll hire in your organization, right? Because paper resumes or any resume of any type is just you're not going to find out the real true identity of the person and how, the trust factor. I always talk about trust being the oxygen in the room. Can the people do what they in fact say they can do? Can you trust them to work in your organization? You trust them with your customers, with your most trusted clients. And so I do think that it comes down to, how you engage. And one of the things we found, and we started out down this path, we were going to do one event a year, and we were, kind of where we were as a podcast and digital. And we just found that people are craving more and more that human interaction and getting in the room with people like themselves and learning from each other and asking people for help or asking people for advice on how to grow their businesses. And I think it comes down to that too. Like, who do you know that's good out there that I can tap into for my organization?
I think people forget too, Microsoft has this incredible backbone area of just training that's free, certifications and training. And I think having those relationships internally are important, and then hiring talent that has, the Microsoft knowledge base already under their belt. Like they've already taken those certifications. They've already gone through the learning paths. Like they understand the tech would be extremely imperative.
I also think too that, Microsoft laid off 15,000 people this year. I mean, and they were good people. These weren't people that were laid off because of performance. And so not everybody wants to go back work for a big company.
Yeah, go hire Microsofties, right?
Why not? If you can hire the right talent. Yeah.
Go get some global black belts that are out there that know how to do the full identity and perimeter and everything that you need. I think that's what we forget. And like I've seen people get laid off that were there for like 20 years, 15 years. So they've got like the historical knowledge back in bomber days.
Yeah. You're living proof of it, Mac. I mean, right? You were in one of the.
You have like an inside. You got the inside scoop of how Microsoft operates, and it's once you're there, it's hard to get rid of that. It's like prison tattoos. Like
it's DNA. It's DNA. It's in your blood.
Yeah, or DNA. Yeah, it's probably better than a prison tattoo. Okay. Well,
there you go, Mac.
No, you don't even know. I have like one teardrop for every MSP.
Yeah, right.
Brought into Microsoft. So on the AI front, especially as we kind of started this, entire conversation around AI and the threat landscape, and now we see AI as an accelerator for service delivery. Do you think that there's any competitive advantage to the human aspect here that we're missing, that Microsoft still wants to also promote and engage with?
I think it comes down to the human aspect, right? I mean, I think AI is going to always be, I think about the internet back in 2000, and We thought the web was going to we're not going to need salespeople anymore because we were just going to be able to do everything on the web. And we realized that wasn't the case. It became an enabling tool. And I think the human aspect and element is going to continue to be super important to success.
Yeah. Yeah.
You agree?
Hey, can I say something about that real quick, Vince? I started reading last year. Our keynote speaker at Write a Boom was Brent Adamson, who wrote the Challenger sale. I don't know if you ever heard of the Challenger sale.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So Brent came and he just released the FrameMaker sale. And one of the examples right in the beginning he talks about, which was so awesome, was travel agents. How the internet, right, just crushed that industry overnight, right? And he sits there and kind of makes a joke of it, like, who would think you'd have to in today's day and age, go, to get an airplane or, or go to get your reservation for a car. What's interesting about it is that industry has had a massive resurgence. And the reason is, and it's really a paradoxical reason, it's because there's so much information now. So if you're like, let's just say you and your wife wanted to do this excursion. Well, there's so many different sites. Do you do it this way? Do you do it that way? Do you do it, led by this kind of person? Do you stay here? Do you stay there? And lo and behold, to Mac's question, there's been this resurgence of the need for humans in this buying decision. So I think it's really fascinating how an industry can go full circle like that.
Agreed. And if I was planning a trip right now to go back to Italy, which I would be doing, it'd be great to have just an agent who understood like where are the best places I should go, restaurants, like lay out my itinerary for me, right? And I think the same thing comes, and I think there's so many aspects to AI, Mac, like there are the AI tools, and as you know, the LLMs and all the components of them. But I still have to have trust for my data. I need to have the governance, security governance around it. I need to protect it. I need to make sure it's treated a certain way. I have to. There's all these other things I need to do. How about my agentic AI? Do I have the right tools to support that and make sure that it's not going off the rails and doing bad things?
Yeah, definitely on the automation side, people are starting to get sloppy. I just saw this funny thing that was like a picture of a newspaper article, and it was all around talking about the person posted it around the failures of AI in this sense where we were getting sloppy. The author at the end, of course it's like littered with M dashes and everything, but at the very end it's all like, would you like me to turn this into a so-and-so or hit on the tone of culture more here? And like they left that into the newspaper article. So I do agree on the human front that we're getting, if we get too reliant upon AI, if we get too comfortable with it, if we don't recognize that automation breaks too, and we need to go back, just like, continuous education, we need to go back and fix those things that we're going to see some of those sloppy things.
Well, I do a lot of social media posts about our events and so on. I mean, I try to make it human. I mean, even if I start off with an idea that germinated out of AI, I totally rewrite it because it looks like it's AI. I don't want to put that out in the public.
Yeah, no, definitely. Sometimes I use less big words now because I don't want people to think it was AI. I'm like, no, I really did use that word.
Hilarious. My daughter actually just told me last night, she's like, I can't use semicolons. Because if you use semicolons, the teacher thinks you've used AI to write your essay.
MSPs need to not use too much AI. We can tell what your CEO newsletter came from. Okay, well, I think this is probably a question that a lot of people would be interested in on this call. If you had, maybe it's a loaded question as well. If you had to pick like one big change that's coming to the partner ecosystem within the next year, 18 months, can you give us a teaser trailer about what that is in cloud security, AI, incentives for partners? Like, what's this big thing that you think we should all keep our ear to the ground on?
That is one of those questions that if I had the answer to, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be sitting on my private island. Well, maybe I shouldn't be a private island, but I'd be someplace else right now. You know, look at where we've gone in such a short period of time. Somebody reminded me the other day that we went from the Wright brothers to man being on the moon in 66 years. Think about that transformation in a period of time where we wouldn't even consider that, technology. I mean, we've gone from, I think it was November of 2022 that ChatGPT hit. And we've been talking about AI for 20, 30 years, but nobody ever really was using it or applying it. Look how far, and we've talked about, I'm going to quote Bill Gates here, but we over anticipate what's going to happen in a year or 2 years or 3 years, and we underestimate what's going to happen in 10 years. That's the world we live in. So I think we're seeing this hockey stick in terms of evolution. And certainly since the evolution, the first year or so of AI was wildly underwhelming, right? I mean, we started to see ChatGPT do some things, but a lot of hallucinations and things. Microsoft leaned in with Copilot. Google leaned in with some of the tools that it had already built out, and AWS is doing the same. And then this past year with agentic AI, we're starting to see the hockey stick kick up a little bit more and more. It's going to be around artificial intelligence in a much more dynamic light. I mean, we're starting to see this with self-driving cars. We'll see self-driving automobiles. We're seeing the robotics already used in distribution in Amazon facilities. We're going to start to see more of the robotic usage in other application areas. So for me, it'd be hard to pinpoint any one thing. What I will say is you're going to see more and more of this evolution happening. But you got to get your basics right. I go back to the data. I go back to all those things because it's all relying on really good sets of data and the ability to access technology in big ways. Energy is becoming more and more of a factor. We're forgetting about the fact that we're going to have an energy shortage here. I had Microsoft on stage from the government affairs group because you're starting to see the nuclear power. My son-in-law's dad manages all those nuclear power plants like 3 Mile Island and the like for Constellation Energy. And how are we going to build these huge data centers and use all of these chipsets that are incredibly power consuming if we don't have power to drive it? So there's a lot of things that are going to happen over the next few years. I think we're just at the very beginning of what I think by the time we're 2030, we're going to look at and go, oh my gosh, how did we get here? It's going to happen so fast, in my opinion. I can't predict which ones are going to happen first, though.
Well, I mean, okay. So I guess I hate looking out 5 years. I feel like that terrifies me. I don't even have a 5-year plan, Andrew. You want to put this one in there, but you go back, you're talking about doing the basics. And I do think that a lot of MSPs are still struggling adopting the basics. So I think Copilot should remain semi-expensive for everyone so that they can do the basics before they start going.
Well, using AI for your own go-to-market strategy, for your business planning, for your marketing tools, for your sales and revenue operations, for your own internal operation. Absolutely. And there'll be more and more of those tools available to help you drive.
Do you think, so this question's more around like, what does the partner of the future look like in the ecosystem? Do you see it? What's your perfect MSP? Is it someone that's fully leaned into AI, fully leaned in outside of hybrid and is all cloud? Like what would be your ideal partner in this ecosystem? Not just a super fan.
I would say the organizations that have the right, I call it a growth mindset in terms of their own business, which means that they're always forward leaning. They're not stuck in their past. They're evolving their organizations consistently, constantly learning and evolving their companies. I mean, that's where the agility piece comes in, this flywheel, because what's perfect today, a year from now and 5 years from now are going to be 3 different scenarios. So you can't nail it, and it's going to continue to change, and you have to continually you have to be a constant learner. You need to build out your network of resources and, come to events like Write a Boom and Ultimate Partner, learn from the best of the best on how to do it and continue to grow that community of people that you lean on, because you're not going to get it in a book. You're not going to get it on the internet. You're not going to get it from any one vendor. You're going to get it from being part of a community of people that are achieving. And those are people you want to be around, because the people that lean in and invest in their own company's success are the ones that are going to be the most successful. And I honestly believe that's how you get there.
Are you going to be at Write a Boom? Do we
I
have
am.
Write a Boom, Andrew? How many Microsoft people are we pimping out at Write a Boom?
It depends if we can get them on board with prison tattoos or not, Mac. If they're on, if they hear this and they're okay, no, I don't know. The door's open. We really want to help.
Yeah.
On the certification side, we're doing a bunch. We hope Vince moderates some of the executives because they want to have roundtable discussions with the MSPs. They've said that firsthand, which is amazing. We want to bring as many as we can to be this facilitator so they can help each other. That's really that's what I feel our role is. I don't know how many, but the more the merrier.
And my birthday is February 6th, Max. So
in Vegas. All right. You're already, you might as well stay an extra day.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Vince, thanks a million. I know you're jumping on a plane on your way to San Fran for Ignite. Safe travels. I really appreciate you doing this before you're heading out. It was great to get you on this. We'll create a podcast out of this as well. I'll send you the link. Mac, thanks for filling in, and as always, Phyllis. And for everybody out there that joined us, thanks so much. I'm always grateful for you guys attending, and have a great, safe week.
Appreciate it. I appreciate you, Mac. Great to meet you. Phyllis, great to meet you as well. Andrew, thank you, sir.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.